Good afternoon, folks. We're going to discuss this morning's top story, and while we'll hit two key aspects of the paper, the big part is a revisiting of how bad we expect this disaster cycle to be. So here is the paper, the discussion of magnetic reversals, excursions, and secular variation. If you'll recall from this morning, one of the last things the paper does is claim to look ahead based on recent trends, recognizing the dropping magnetic field strength now, and suggesting that a full magnetic reversal was not on the table. But then they chose not to discuss the possibility of the current shift being an excursion, despite those being a core focus throughout the paper. For those who need a reminder, the Fulcron magnetic reversals are the rare events. They happen every few 100,000 years. They take more than 1,000 years to unfold, which is actually why they are less scary than the excursions. When it takes dozens to hundreds of generations to complete that shift, species can adapt, migrate, etc., and the same goes for Earth's energy balance and the climate. The excursions, though, are nearly the same magnitude of change but can happen in less than a human lifetime. That has been confirmed 4 times in the last decade. And that rapid of a shift is why the peer-reviewed science literature suggests they are so deadly and cause the upticks in species extinctions. Secular variations are much smaller changes, and those happen on centennial to millennial scales and do not usually involve both a magnetic pole shift and a drastic change in magnetic field strength. So again, the paper claimed to give a little forecast at the end, but only mentioned the full reversals and ignored the excursion topic, which again is much scarier. Now, the other thing they did was describe how bad versions of the excursion are likely to happen every 23,000 years. By the way, that is well within the error range for the 12,000 year cycle doubling to 24,000 years, suggesting that every other cycle is worse and the ones in the middle aren't as bad. And this brings us to the overall question, collectively considering the radiation influx, climate shift, volcanoes, and great tsunamis. How bad should we expect the biosphere hit to be this time? Here is a list of the major and minor excursions that have taken place in the last 50,000 years, the 6,000 and 12,000 year cycle events. Now, while the Mono Lake excursion 36,000 years ago was major, a bad event, and 24,000 years later, Gothenburg was pretty bad as well. That seems to match their every other cycle conclusion of severity. However, outside of that one example, we see that it kind of breaks down. Lachamp was bad. Actually, both were 48,000 and 42,000 years ago. So at the bottom of the chart, the last 3 listed were all pretty bad. When the next ones were actually minor, despite the expectation coming with the 12,000 and 6,000 year cycles. Gothenburg 12,000 years ago was bad, and the NOAA or China event 6,000 years ago was not as bad. Now, this might seem a little confusing, but let's think of it this way. Whether you go with that paper's every other cycle hypothesis, or what I have suggested in the past, simply that 2 terrible cycles don't seem to be hitting back to back. In fact, we don't really have much in the way of evidence for that. It suggests that this coming event, while it will still be a catastrophe, will be like Lake Mungo or Helena Pali, and it will not be as bad as Gothenburg, Mono Lake, or Lachamp. Species will still go extinct, and a large percentage of humans won't make it to the next stage of Earth. But I now reiterate what I've said before. You can survive this. Don't be discouraged. For you, your family, and anyone else you care for, be what you were meant to be. Realize the potential of your DNA that has survived many of these cycles before. Subscribe for daily updates here, and I'll see you in the morning for the daily show. Be safe, everyone.